Thank you for joining the Sharpest College Football Podcast. This is the fourth and final in our series of previews of the college football playoff teams. Today we're talking about the SEC. I am BuckMetrics, joined as always by Robert Martin. Fortunately, our SEC expert guest, Graham Coffey, not able to make it today, but we have some AI art that still includes him, so I guess he's with us in spirit only. So today, going over the SEC playoff teams, AI Art doing its usually great job, somehow just thinking that Robert just lives to grill. I will point out, albeit a little messily, Robert, do better on the on keeping the protein on the grill there, please.
It's for the dogs. It's for the dogs.
Yes.
Just a quick point. Check out those tongs, eh? What's up with those tongs? It's like a tuning fork.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, it is. I didn't. You have two tuning forks, one in each hand here.
Yeah.
Yeah, AI just conflated Graham and I. A little editing on my part. I edited everybody's two favorite Georgia legends, defensive coordinator Tom Grantham, who I don't think is really enjoyed and appreciated there anymore. And are you familiar with Ray Goff?
No, I don't. No.
He was a coach. He was a coach before Jim Donnan, who preceded Mark Richt.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think these people are not probably the most two popular people at this Georgia tailgate that we see. I do also have to point out when AI threw in the UGA on the right, the dog owner, the jealous dog owner in me took over, so I had to put my very photogenic dog to the right of the gentleman wearing the Goff t-shirt or sweatshirt here. All right, a little SEC chit-chat before we get to our group of 5 teams. Pretty formful. You and I were more accurate than the average bear in terms of saying we don't really believe in Texas as much as everybody else. Preseason number 1 Texas, I will mention. Also keep this in mind when these idiot, way too early top 25 columns come out in about a month as soon as the championship game is over. There's nothing more worthless and useless than those. Graham and I all both had Georgia and Bama in the SEC title game, so I think more or less formful. South Carolina, maybe a little disappointing, although a lot of people were not counting on them. Nothing really stood out in terms of where people finished. Missouri a little better, I think, than I expected to. Bo Pribula really worked out well there. That'll be interesting because they lost their OC to Washington State, and that guy made a big difference. So be curious to see who they hire. Anything really stand out to you that was unexpected in the SEC?
There's nothing really crazy this year. I will say that, just generally, Florida and Texas both massively underperformed expectations. There's talk of DJ Legway Heisman early in the preseason. That's not even, and Legway's easily going to finish in the bum list, I'm fairly sure. So that's one alone right there. Texas and Arch Manning, again, we weren't the biggest fans of them. I actually had a couple of Texas not to make the playoffs and those cashed. That was great too. But at the same point in time, I also had Arch Manning Heisman. And the thing is, I also think it's still dumb, but you have to, honestly, next year I'm probably going to have some Manning Heisman again, because you have to. Because honestly, and we've talked about this a couple times, just the sheer amount of, even when he was just okay, and doing throws that every other top quarterback would be able to easily make, and if he does, it's like suddenly he's put respect on his name. I remember with the FanDuel tweet, but
Yes.
This is the thing, it's scary, and Texas had a tougher schedule this year than last year. Texas A&M has had 2 very easy schedules. I think Texas A&M's schedule gets a bit more difficult next year. Texas's schedule next year isn't that easy either. The thing is, I think that part of the issue because the whole debate is between SEC and the Big Ten. And it was actually funny. There was a clip. I've got to find it somewhere. I saw it on Twitter or something, I think, where it was Kirk Herbstreit talking to one of the other ESPN commentators. I think it was this year. And he was asking the one commentator, a lot of people say the big 3 leagues are this was early in the season when it looked like Miami, Florida State were still okay. And he was the Big Ten, SEC, and the ACC are the big 3 leagues. And he was do you think that basically the Big Ten and the SEC are the big 2, and then the ACC is clearly the third? And Kirk asked the other guy, do you think that the Big Ten is closer to the SEC or closer to the ACC? And the other guy was closer to the ACC. Herbstreit was what? And it's just, he's it's insane. I just immediately, that's insane. I got to find that clip. I was taken aback when I heard that clip. And it's so clearly wrong. But the problem is people are going to make the arguments like, well, the SEC had 5 teams in the playoff and the Big Ten only had 3. And because it doesn't matter when you look at cumulative win probability, they don't do that calculation based on futures. But the thing is, honestly, how much of the SEC getting 5 teams in the playoff is literally just a function of just 8 SEC games instead of the 9 for the Big Ten. Like you can't really reverse engineer a Big Ten schedule, but like you're telling me that USC would have maybe had one less loss had they not had to play Oregon and Illinois. Like you could also make the case for Washington. Maybe if Washington had their season had gone differently, maybe they didn't have Ohio State or something on that schedule, they could have been up there. So I honestly don't think like this whole argument of the SEC is better than the Big Ten just because they got more berths. I don't believe that. I think it's very clear the top 3 teams in the country are probably Indiana, Ohio State, and Oregon in some order, probably close to that order actually. I think Georgia's 4th. And then I think that at a certain point, you just have to start ranking other SEC teams because you're running out of teams in the top 12. But the problem is that I think that the gap between those top 3 and even the 4th is probably about a touchdown. Like just straight up, right? I don't like if you let's say we got into a championship game. How many points would you need for Georgia against Indiana or Ohio State? Like at least 7.
At least 6, yeah.
Yeah, like I need 6, 7. The joke
Yeah.
that was an unintentional joke.
Oh,
But this is the thing.
right.
But that's what I like. I need that. I need at least a touch. I need a touchdown, at least probably, or very close to a touchdown. I'd be waiting to bet in games to get it to a 7.5. So this is the thing. And again, that's the best SEC team, right? That's the best SEC team. Let's talk about, and as we will, let's talk about Oklahoma. What's that number for Oklahoma? What's that number for Alabama? What's that number for Texas A&M? What's that number for Ole Miss without Lane Kiffin? It just gets worse and worse. We talk about Georgia. Georgia's a team that barely escaped a lot of their games this season. This Georgia team could have easily had 3 losses. Somehow they were the away team, I guess, nominally the away team in a game played at basically their hometown. I still don't understand how Alabama was the number 1 ranked SEC team, but I guess it's because of weird tiebreakers because their only loss in conference was technically to Oklahoma, but Georgia's only loss was to Alabama.
Alabama, that's why. So they had the head-to-head.
I guess, but see, this is the problem where I think what's going to be very heavily considered soon is they've got to consider using the committee rankings or just some rankings for the tiebreakers on this. Because, okay, yeah, they have the head-to-head, but, like, Alabama has a loss to Florida State. You couldn't reasonably say that Alabama was the favorite in that game. Like, there's no way Alabama should have been the number 1 seed. Now, but the problem is, some people are going to say that game had nothing to do with, but it does. It does.
It's a non-conference game. We're talking about the ACC champion here.
Yeah, I know. But, see, this is the problem where a lot of people, for deciding playoffs, they just look at wins and losses. They just say, oh, okay, they have this 2-loss team is better than this 3-loss team. But the problem is that's not how, like, in the NFL, yeah, a team that has 8 losses is probably worse than a team that has 7 losses. Because roughly every schedule is the same, roughly, to some extent. Every schedule has worse teams, every schedule has better teams. Some are easier than others, of course. But there's not a insane difference between the, like, 1st and 15th schedule in the NFL. On the flip side, there is a massive difference between the 1st and 30th schedule in college football, right? There's a massive difference. And I think that this is where a lot of people just assume that the wins and losses is the thing that should be the most important in determining who gets into the playoffs, but it really shouldn't. There's probably some other teams that didn't make the playoffs that are probably better than some of these 2-loss teams that did. And I think until we actually have that conversation or just expand the playoff, which apparently they can do now in the middle of January, which I guess we could just do that now. Apparently, it was supposed to be you had to do it before like December or something. I guess they just moved it back a month. But unless they expand the playoff, then the card doesn't really matter.
Yeah, agree. Again, I don't care who's the home team in a neutral site thing. I don't know. If we're still going to have these conference championships, we should get rid of the neutral site thing. I hate that. Play them at school. Just be an awesome atmosphere. One other thing about the SEC, I thought Kentucky was going to be really bad, and they were bad, but I think they won 5 games, so their record was better than I expected. I didn't think they were going to fire Stoops, and I bring this up, it was really interesting. And I'm curious, I don't know if you and I talked about this before, either on the pod or in DMs. They didn't fire Stoops until Monday, until basically all the first wave of SEC jobs were filled by Golding, Silverfield, Golish, and Summerall. And I bring that up because I think this was purposeful, because Summerall actually played at Kentucky. And there had been the thing about Kentucky opens, he's probably going to take that. And I think Kentucky waited for him to take the Florida job before even announcing that Stoops was being fired, so there would be no way to settle for Will Stein. I don't know if that was their first guy, but I think that was just a purposeful thing. And thank you, Kentucky, for getting Will Stein out of my conference. I'm so sick of that guy scoring 50 points a game. Pretty good hire there. Definitely better than what Arkansas did. But I saw that as really interesting. It just, everybody else is firing people days and weeks before. So I found that interesting as well.
Yeah, Kentucky is, with someone like Will Stein, it's a bit weird why he would take the Kentucky job, right? This is not particularly an easy, like, you would have thought that with a lot of other jobs that are like borderline opened up, like the Florida State job, which is functionally open at this point. Maryland is going to be open, is functionally open as well. They just didn't fire him. Clemson could theoretically be open as well, right? There's so many other jobs that I think would be far better in terms of, I think there's so many better options that I think are far more competitive. And again, Kentucky's functionally equivalent to an Ole Miss job, right? And that's a job that Lane Kiffin left. Right now, again, we don't know specifically why. There's lots of reasons, specifically the governor getting involved. But there's lots of reasons why you could take LSU over that. Again, if they just give you a lot of money, it's a more established program. I think fundamentally deep down, Lane Kiffin either felt or knew that it was going to be more difficult for him to win a national championship at Ole Miss rather than LSU. And I gotta say, Kentucky's probably at that tier. Like, I think there's probably better places that you could potentially win a national championship at. And I think that maybe he wants a challenge. Maybe he has ties to Kentucky. I don't know. But that's, to me, that wasn't the greatest. Oh, I'm excited to see what he does in the SEC. And maybe it's great. Maybe he has a plan. But I don't know. It wouldn't have been the job that I would have taken in that position.
Yeah, it's a tough starter job. I'd rather take an American job just because it's easier to win that conference, or at least win 8 or 9 games and then get something that's not Kentucky. But what's interesting about that is he grew up in a Kentucky household. Both his parents went to Kentucky. He actually played at Louisville. I didn't know that. So there's a lot of that in his background there. So that makes sense. So that's enough of the chit-chat. Let's get into our grid here. We've discussed how this whole thing works before.
I believe this will be for the last time.
Yes, for the last time, sadly. So we'll start with Alabama. I think I want to do Alabama and Oklahoma at the same time.
Yeah.
Maybe just to a little compare and contrast, if you will. Here's what's interesting is my model has liked Alabama. These are, like, I want to say in a vacuum. In a typical week, I look at these power ratings and I'm like, gosh, this is a really good team. Very well balanced offense for Alabama. Total rating of 24.3. My model really likes this team. Then you look at it in terms of this population, and I do have them rated as the highest SEC team. But to your point earlier, great, that gets you 4th in this group here. Here's the thing is, look, I didn't watch Alabama every week. So I don't know up close and personal, but I've seen enough. Definitely, obviously, watch the sport closely. I don't know what this team does great, other than Ty Simpson has 2 really nice receivers in Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard. There just seems to be something missing about this Alabama team. I don't know what it is. It's like they don't have a 5th gear, and maybe sometimes not even a 4th gear. And I think that's an interesting contrast because Oklahoma's defense is like the 5th gear ultimately, in that they've shut down a lot of good. They're just good, and they don't let you do anything a lot of the time. They have by far the best run defense in FBS, the best in this group, obviously, by that same measure. Their offense is really mediocre, though. That's been the story, is Mateer just made him. He cleared a low bar in being better than Jackson Arnold. Congratulations on that. But this is not a playoff level offense. So just if I'm comparing and contrasting these two teams, Alabama and Oklahoma, My first thought is I see Oklahoma going farther, just in that they do at least have one thing that makes the other team really uncomfortable, and that if your offense is okay, if not if as long as your offense isn't like Iowa, you can win a playoff game or two. I just don't have faith in just you nodded, so I'll throw it to you on this. Alabama just doesn't have that top gear anywhere, right? I don't know what they have that scares you.
Yeah, a couple of things. One, yeah, that defense of Oklahoma is very scary. Their offense was just never that great. Like they beat up Michigan, but even then they didn't score that many points against Michigan. Like they were just never. It was never like, oh wow, this offense is amazing. And then obviously Mateer got hurt, but then he came back for Texas, and then that was a disaster. And he's just been playing since. He's probably playing hurt, but also he wasn't laying the world on fire before the injury either. So
Yeah,
it's there's a lot of pieces to that. Yes, he's better than Jackson Arnold, but that's not that much of a stretch. I think that again at a 5.9, that's one of the worst offenses here in all of it, and also that's obviously a more kind of season long look. That does not look at the fact that, oh hey, by the way, they like barely escaped LSU and they looked rough against Missouri and they only did score Alabama by a field goal the last time. The line here, I think, is still a pick -1. I think it's Alabama -1, if I'm not mistaken, or it might just be like -115 each way or -120 each way. I think that's the way this is. I don't. This is a 50-50 game, in my opinion. I honestly don't know which side to bet on. I'm looking for an edge. My model does have Alabama, but my model has hated Oklahoma the last couple of weeks. A part of me thinks that if John Mateer has been still suffering from injury and there is something still nagging there on that injury, then hey, having 3 weeks off, not a bad way to start that. He didn't have to play conference championship weekend, so he had that weekend off. And he had last week off. No, how many weeks is that? The last time they played a game was, let's do the math here. They last played a game on,
it'll be almost 3 weeks between games.
yeah, they played the 29th, so 1 week, 2 weeks, yeah, almost 3 weeks, just under 3 weeks. That's got to be pretty good if you're still nursing a hand injury. I'm just saying on that. Don't think Alabama's nursing many injuries. I think they're just not good. But this is the thing, right? Now, the argument, though, is Alabama probably should have beaten Oklahoma the first time they played. If Alabama had beaten Oklahoma the first time they played, Oklahoma wouldn't be in the playoffs for sure. And it'd probably be Notre Dame. Probably, yeah. And that'd be a much more difficult team for this Oklahoma team, or for Alabama. But this is the thing, right? It's Oklahoma has looked horrible. And my guess is that, again, this is really where I want to see what the betting public is on this game. If everybody's on one side, like everybody's okay, Oklahoma's looked horrible, we want to bet Alabama, then I'll bet Oklahoma. But everybody's going to know Alabama looked horrible against Georgia. We're all going to bet Oklahoma, then I'll go bet Alabama. Another small thing to think about in this matchup, too, is the fact that apparently Kalen DeBoer is a candidate for the Michigan job, which has become available. We are not talking about why it became available, but that's a potential distraction here on that. So this is the thing, right? It's potentially okay, hey, you know what, we lose this game, I'll just go to Michigan and call it a day, because they're not going to be happy. Literally, if Kalen DeBoer loses this game, he's going to spend all next season on the hot seat, 100%. Versus if he just loses this game and then goes to Michigan, problem solved. Right now, if he wins this game, sure, whatever. But, like, the thing is, we've heard DeBoer for a couple of things. We heard DeBoer at one point for Penn State. We've heard DeBoer now for Michigan. I have a sneaking suspicion that he wants out of Alabama. You don't keep getting, your name doesn't keep getting mentioned for all these jobs if that's the scenario here, where it's just okay, yeah, he actually wants to stay at Alabama. Then if he wants to stay at Alabama, then it's not. Kenny Dillingham was mentioned at one point. He stayed there. Now he's being mentioned a little bit again, but still nothing. Signetti, he wanted to stay at Indiana. That's done. Never heard his name again. This is the thing. So I honestly don't, like, there's so much in the background. But the thing is, fundamentally, and I think this is your point on this too, whoever wins this game doesn't really matter. They're just going to get destroyed by Indiana the next week, or a couple weeks later. So this is the thing. It's, again, I don't even know what that line needs to be, like 10.5 for me to bet the SEC team. Like, the SEC is not comparable to Indiana in any way.
Yeah, we talked about this when we did the Big Ten preview, and you talked me into, and I agree with this, that Oklahoma would be should she be a shorter number against Indiana. But boy, I just talked through that, and I don't even know if Oklahoma gets to double digits in terms of points against Indiana. Now the thing is, Oklahoma might actually be able to contain Indiana and make it like a 9-6 ball game or something. I'll say this: that's not a game where you're not going to hear you can't settle for touchdowns on this, or you can't settle for field goals on this one. I think that field goals could probably just be enough in that one. But to that point, I just don't know what kind of path Alabama would have against Indiana. The team where I'm not sure exactly how they scare you, those ones get crushed like an ant by Indiana. Whereas I think Oklahoma could probably make an Iowa play out of it.
I think.
Although that's the Rose Bowl.
That's the Rose Bowl. I think the argument is the
Ugh.
fact that like Oklahoma has a good defense, and Indiana also has a good defense, but maybe Oklahoma's defense can shut down Indiana enough so that they can be competitive in this game. Indiana is just an all-around better version than Alabama. And when you have one team that's just a better version of another team, it usually doesn't end very well for the worst team.
Yeah, but now this is at home. The profile's better for Oklahoma, but not unlike Oklahoma and Iowa. They're pretty similar. Oklahoma with a better offense. Indiana was life and death. Now that was at Iowa. Oregon was life and death. That was at Iowa. I don't know how much of I don't know. At some point, one of my deeper dives needs to be like, how much is like the Kinnick home field worth? It's got to be just off the charts. Seriously.
At
I got
least
to look
seven.
at their road home splits. Yeah, I'm thinking so. It's just weird. Now, how much of that gets undone when it's Oklahoma, Indiana at the Rose Bowl? Does that just... Oklahoma won at Alabama. Alabama, like we just said, they're a good, not great team. That's interesting. What would be the best offense that Oklahoma's played this year? I thought that would be interesting to me.
Ole Miss.
That's interesting.
That's got to be
They
it.
lost... Did they... Let me see. Yeah, they lost to Ole Miss. Yeah, Ole Miss got 34 on them. That's concerning. Ole Miss, spoil it. We both like them, but they have a good offense. Other than this, look at this: Illinois State, Michigan, Temple, Auburn, Kent State, Texas, your ultimate mileage may vary team, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee got 27 on them. They beat Alabama. Alabama got 21 on them. Missouri got 6. That's without Beulah, and LSU 13. Yeah, I just don't see it getting past Indiana for them, and they have the better chance of those two, Alabama and Oklahoma. Fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's I think again, I don't know. I honestly I want to whoever the public is betting in this game, I just want to fade that. If they're betting one side, I want to take the other side. That's it. And then take Indiana. That's it. That's my play in this game. I don't know. This is a 50-50 game to me. But like a couple points on that too before we move on to probably Ole Miss and the other SEC teams. The Georgia Alabama game is interesting because like I had it as a pick. I actually had Bama favored in the first one between Bama and Georgia. This one I had as a pick, so that means that my model was saying Georgia had been trending better than Alabama had in the last few weeks. And looking across the board here at your stuff, you've got Bama with a better offense, Georgia with a slightly better defense. Your model probably didn't have Bama. What did your model have for the SEC championship game? Probably.
It had Alabama.
Yeah, it had Alabama, right? They got blown out. Now the question is, how and why did they get blown out? The simple answer is they just got blown out, and you could say Georgia's the better team. What if that team is just falling apart, right? What if there's something else wrong there that we don't see, and the team is just giving up? And honestly, that kind of makes sense because we've seen Alabama barely escape Auburn, get crushed by Georgia. They lost to Oklahoma, and who'd they play between Oklahoma and...
They were tied with Auburn at one point, right?
Yeah, they were tied with Auburn. Who they play before Auburn? Who they play? No, they played like an FCS team, I think, right?
Yeah, Eastern Illinois. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that one doesn't matter. But
even before Oklahoma, they played LSU, and it was like 20-9.
That's right. I remember that game was also very close too. So this is the thing where it's like they should have been more competitive with Georgia and they weren't. So what does that tell you? Now the thing is, if I'm betting on Alabama here, it's just a bet that Oklahoma is actually just terrible. Because if you want to bet on two, like in my opinion, these are two teams that have just gotten worse in the last month, just straight up worse in the last month. Basically, since they played each other, both these teams have just dissolved. So which one has gotten worse? I think Oklahoma has gotten worse, but again, I could be just weighted on that. I like again, this is where it's just like whatever the spread is against Indiana, I don't care. I'm taking Indiana. And actually, you can actually FanDuel actually already has future lines. I think it's
I was going
against
to ask you that.
yeah. What is the line? I think I bet both of them because again, if the one doesn't exist, the other it's void anyway. I think I bet. What did I bet actually? Let me call it because this is relevant for our conversation here. Yes, Indiana minus 8.5 against Oklahoma and against Alabama 6.5. So they're saying there's a 2 point. They're saying Alabama is slightly better than Oklahoma by about 2 points against Indiana. But honestly, I take Indiana for both those spreads. I don't care. Both of those are 100% Indiana spreads. I don't like. They're gonna Indiana can easily win both those games by multiple scores. But this is the thing, right? It's which of these has gotten worse, and I think Oklahoma has gotten worse. But again, if you told me it was Alabama,
Really?
I'd be like, look, they barely escaped LSU there. Like they could have gone down to LSU. They barely escaped an Auburn team without their starting quarterback, and that's also LSU on a backup quarterback and a fired head coach. Like it's been rough for Oklahoma. Bama, yeah, okay, you barely survived Auburn, but that Auburn team was actually slightly better than people thought it gave it credit for. And they got crushed by Georgia. This is the thing. I honestly, I don't know. I'd have to see it, but like, I could see either way. I think Oklahoma's gotten worse. I agree with that line. Like that again, the line basically says now. I guess it's at home, so basically saying Oklahoma has like what a point of field home, like 1 point. Oh no, because yeah, Oklahoma's the home team.
Yeah.
So they're saying Oklahoma has 1 point of home field advantage. That seems a little low.
1-3. Yeah, no, that's actually a pretty tough place to play. Yeah, the more we talk through this, I don't know, not to spoil it, but I keep on landing on Indiana, even though you've got them number 2. I've got them actually rated a little bit lower than Ohio State.
To be fair, I did not update this after the championship games. And to be fair, 1 and 2 is very deceptive. They're within tenths. They were even before the conference championship games within tenths of a point of each other. So this was not the delta between 1 and 2 was not 1. It was like 0.1.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We just don't see a way that either of these teams gets to the Final Four, though.
No, I think I'm excited to see this game on Friday night, mostly because it's a Friday night game, so that's cool. But I don't think this game is going to be particularly exciting. I think it could be. It's going to be fun to see it, but like this game screams like 16-13 slog or something. That's what it screams to me. One of these teams wins it, and then you just get to go play in the Rose Bowl and get crushed by Indiana.
Yes. It just seems, I think you're probably going with this too when you say 2 scores. It feels like that Rose Bowl line should be north of 10.
Yeah. And the reason it's not is because one of them has an SEC logo beside them.
Exactly. All right, next team we're going to talk about Ole Miss. We've talked about them quite a bit when we beat up Tulane yesterday. So, executive summary of my points on Ole Miss. Great offense. I wouldn't be surprised if they just ran away from Tulane. I also wouldn't be surprised if, since this will be Pete Golding's first game as a head coach in college, I could see them losing this game. It's definitely like one of those March Madness first round games where, the 13 seed, the longer the 13 plays with the 4 seed, the more nervous the 4 seed is going to get here. I think that's not unlike what we're going to be seeing here. I also want to point out, I've made the point several times, I'm not sure what we're going to get from Charlie Weiss Jr. I just don't know how focused he's going to be, because I'm sure he's being pulled in a lot of directions doing LSU stuff too, but he's coming back to call plays here. It's not a good defense. Guess whose defense is better than this? My team. And my team's defense is a challenge. So this is a lopsided team. The head coach came from the deficiency of this year's team, which is a concern. We beat this one up, so you can say your piece on Tulane versus Ole Miss, but Go ahead and do that. Then we'll get to their prospects against Georgia.
Yeah, Ole Miss should win this game. That being said, I bet on Tulane. Again, I think 17.5 is too many points. I think Tulane is designed to be like a championship team. They're a championship caliber. They knew they were one of the best teams in the American the entire season. They played like it. And the thing is, if there was a spot for a G5 team to knock off one of these Power 4 or Power 2 in this case teams, this would be it. Losing a head coach, right? And now your head coach is going on somewhere else, but it doesn't really matter. You're on for basically one last destiny ride, right? This is the thing where it's like, hey, yeah, let's ride this. Let's see how far we can go. Florida's going to let me keep playing because they're not doing anything with Florida right now. So may as well just keep playing this, right? And this is the thing, right? It's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to probably play this team next year. So let's learn everything we can. We've already played them once this year. But the thing is where Tulane played Ole Miss and was like, yeah, okay, we learned from that game. Now the Ole Miss coaching staff is very different, right? They didn't learn anything from that game. Yeah, we crushed them. Okay, great. So this is the thing. Tulane learned from that game. Ole Miss didn't. So I like Tulane in here. Now I like the 17.5. Do I love Tulane to win outright? No. But if you told me they did, I would not be surprised. It would not surprise me if Tulane actually like if you told me Tulane won, I wouldn't be like that's crazy. I'd be like, okay. I guess Pete Golding isn't going to be particularly good as a head coach then, I guess, and that'd be my response to that.
Yeah, I wonder if his coaching contract. Are you familiar with the concept of SaaS, the service?
I think so, yes.
So instead of paying, you buy the software forever. You get like annual. What it's just as long as you want the software for a month, you just pay like QuickBooks, $30 a month. Okay. I wonder if his contract is set up like that, where it's just he's month to month until the user just pulls the agreement.
He was named a head coach hours after Kiffin left, so I don't think the contract had. Clearly Sexton didn't negotiate his contract, so it's probably not like a $40 million buyout or something. It's very clearly like the buyout's probably a couple mil, right? I gotta think Ole Miss just wanted stability at this exact moment, and they know that he's not the long-term answer as head coach, but like they need a head coach for this football. Like they're going to a playoff game, they need a head coach, and yeah, maybe this is going to go badly, but whatever, we'll do this year, and we'll take next year. Then if next year goes poorly, then we'll fire him and we'll rebuild again. Like they've clearly figured out a lot of the NIL stuff. They figured it out, but the thing is, they don't even know what they have right now. They're like, who's even like at the time this was announced, they don't know their players for next year. They don't know their coaching staff for next year. There are so many things that were up in the air when they did this that I think that they just were like, quickly, let's just do this now. And then if we have to let him go after next season, then whatever, we'll just do it. But this is just kind of like a bridge coach.
Yeah, which Ole Miss has done before after they fired Hugh Freeze. They had elevated their offensive line coach, Matt Luke, who, you know, the old, like, we joked about, oh, so-and-so won, what, the SWAC or whatever, because somebody had to. And now they go to Florida, whatever. And it's, I don't know if they're a good coach or not because somebody had to win that conference. The same thing, somebody has to coach this team. Not that it's going to be done effectively or well. I also don't have a lot of faith in this AD as well. Because I don't know if we talked about this when, about a week before the Egg Bowl, apparently Keith Carter said, look, we need a definitive answer from Kiffin on whether he's going to coach and whether he's going to stay here or not before the Egg Bowl. Do you remember this?
I remember this, yes.
Yeah. So complete the sentence. So then what happens if he doesn't? What are you going to do? Fire him? You're going to pay LSU's buyout for him? Okay. This guy needs to, I don't know. I think he needs to spend a year just reading Sun Tzu's Art of War or something because I don't think he understands kind of anything. Yeah, okay. More coin flippy, to use a term, than I think the average football fan thinks between Tulane and Ole Miss. I don't know, just before we move on to the next game, does that mean that there's since you live in this world and I don't even read the brochure on the housing development here, does that lend itself to some kind of live bet on Tulane? I don't know.
If Ole Miss scored early and you're getting like 21.5, 24.5, something like that, then 100%, yeah, pound that.
Do they do moneyline games? Do they offer moneyline games in game?
Yeah, you could bet anything. You could bet anything. There's now to the point where you could bet quarterback props, like receiving yards overs in mid-game.
how about if it's just like a 10-point game at halftime? That's when I might actually just figure,
if Ole Miss is
this is
leading,
where he's going to pucker.
if Ole Miss is your scenario is Ole Miss is leading by 10 at half.
Yeah, 17-7.
Then at that point, then Tulane is probably a 21.5 point underdog. They're probably like the line is probably 21.5, maybe 23.5. Because at that point, just think about it, right? Half the game is played, so you'd roughly be expecting Tulane to win by 20, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So the line would be like 21.5, maybe 23.5. And
I'm going much more aggressive than that. It's a 10-point game at halftime. I want to go money line on Tulane. Because if it's still a 10-point game in the fourth quarter, it just takes one dumb thing and all of a sudden it's his first game as a head coach. I don't want to repeat it for the 17th time on the podcast.
Yeah.
But that matters. And the other guy's got 3 titles. I mean, that I'll probably just check in at halftime because my ADD brain panics when I have to do things quickly. If I can exhale at half, maybe I just have a drink or something and just say, okay, what's the real play here? Can I drink in this one? This is a morning game, by the way.
Okay, morning for you. Sorry.
Yeah.
This is 4 in the afternoon for us, so that is you can drink at 4 in the afternoon.
Yeah, I can pretend I'm in Canada then, in Toronto.
But no, that's an interesting point too, right? If it's your first game as a head coach, you are replacing Lane Kiffin. You are tasked with being this Tulane team, and you're up at half, and you're like, okay, hey, things are going pretty good, right? You're starting to think about Georgia. You're starting to think about the game plan, right? And even if this isn't okay, we win. Like, that's the whole point of betting on spread too, right? There's a bunch of scenarios where Tulane ties it up, and then all of a sudden Ole Miss has to go down the field and kick a game-winning field goal, right? That's a very real outcome here. Even a scenario where like Tulane is up by down by a touchdown, like there is going to be insane. If you told me that Ole Miss was going to win 100% by at least a touchdown, I'd still be betting Tulane because there's so much value with 17.5, and especially if Ole Miss scores first and you're getting something like 24.5, like there's value there, right? 100%. So I'd be looking at that.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be about 2:30 my time. Too soon to take a drink, unfortunately. All right. Ole Miss gets past Tulane. We hit on this briefly yesterday. You know what? Okay, I'll put it this way. I want to say I just can't see them getting past Georgia. Ole Miss should have won at Georgia. I think that game was at Georgia.
I want to say yes.
And clearly, this is not the same team because the head coach is now recruiting his butt off in Baton Rouge. So I don't know how much we can take from that. Let me just start with that. Can we take anything from that?
That's the interesting thing too, right? And I think that's the argument for Ole Miss, and again, one of the arguments against Georgia here. The fact that Georgia has shorter odds than Oregon and or even Texas is insane. Like their plus 600 is offensive. It shouldn't be that high. But this is the thing, right? It's if Ole Miss puts it together. And if Pete Golding can make this plane fly, and yeah, maybe Ole Miss wins by 21 or something, or 30 or something, right? A blowout against Tulane. And Ole Miss looks fine. And we're looking at what? What is the line there between Ole Miss and Georgia? Ole Miss plus 5.5.
What?
It's Ole Miss plus 5.5 against Georgia, right? That's the live line I'm getting. They don't even have it in line with Tulane. They're just assuming that Tulane will lose, which okay. So if that line is 5.5, and if Ole Miss looks okay, I think we're taking the 5.5. Maybe if Ole Miss wins and covers the spread, I'd take that against Georgia because it means that they figured this out. They've to some extent figured this out, right?
Let me see this. Yeah, it's the Sugar Bowl. Okay.
Because here's the thing: if there's a combination of Oklahoma winning, if Oklahoma beats Bama, and Ole Miss blows out Tulane, and then all of a sudden we're like, okay, yeah, you blew out Alabama, but what does that mean? Because Oklahoma just crushed them. And then this game would be before the Sugar Bowl. Indiana would play Oklahoma before the Sugar Bowl, right? But if Indiana then crushes Oklahoma, then all of a sudden it's okay. Ole Miss should have beaten Georgia earlier this season. They didn't. Georgia, and then you all of a sudden say, hey, okay, what was the last thing Georgia did outside of beating a apparently dead Alabama? Oh, that's right. They put up 12 against Georgia Tech. Oh, okay. That's the thing. So this is where you could go to that game and be like, okay, I think you make that play. Now, do I think Ole Miss has even a shot against Ohio State? No, not a prayer. Or Miami or whatever. But that's a scenario. If Ole Miss is actually able to do shut down Tulane, yeah, we could talk about them beating Georgia, and then we will be doing another podcast before the New Year's bowls. So we will be doing this after the day after the playoff games. So we'll talk about it. But yeah, like there's a path there, maybe.
I'm so on the other side because I think that if Ole Miss does beat Tulane, I think that Kirby Smart will have a better understanding of what Pete Golding is as a head coach than Pete Golding will. And I don't think you can express strongly enough the advantage that a coach with 2 national championships, and basically he's a column 1 guy in our coaching graphic, what advantage that is to basically just have the day off and to watch your future opponent in his first game as a head coach if it's Golding. I don't want to say I don't see a path for Ole Miss, but I think it's pretty narrow. And here's the other thing too. Again, I'm just going to pull the same strings that I did in the Tulane thing. But at what point is Charlie Weiss Jr. going to say, "Hey, I got another job to do? Can someone else call plays here? I'm getting tired." Because this is going to be, so it was last week. So it'll be almost 2 weeks, a little less than 2 weeks of doing 2 jobs when this game is played on Saturday against Tulane. Now you're going to have another almost 2 weeks, right? Because this game's going to be on the 31st, or this one's on the 1st, I think, the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to get the best of him, and that's not to say he sucks. It's to say he's a human being, and if you're doing that for a month, I know these guys like work crazy hours, but it's a big ask. I actually, if I'm Georgia, and again, this is all subject to exactly what Ole Miss does against Tulane, but I still just right now I thought you were going to give me a number that's closer to 9 or 10. Yeah, that's interesting. 5 points doesn't line up with this. Where are you? With this disparity either, right?
No, it shouldn't. It really shouldn't.
So you're saying, okay, if you're saying the Georgia number's too low.
I guess.
I was going to say, do you want to do I want to talk to DraftKings thing with Robert?
You could take both sides of that. I'm not sure whoever made this line. It's just been the line across all the books. You could make that argument that it's the Georgia line that's weird in that it's just like this side of the bracket is very clearly weaker than the other side of the like. How surprised would you be if it wasn't Ohio State or Miami in the final? Like,
yeah.
How surprised would you be if all of a sudden you found out Georgia took down Ohio State in the semifinal and was in the like? How surprised would you be?
Let me put it this way. I can't say surprised because Miami has Mario. So there's an inevitability about that. I could. I'm not as convinced clearly on Ohio State as I am Indiana. Their schedule, they got a lot of mileage on their schedule out of beating Texas in week 1. Let's wait till we do Georgia for that. How about that?
Makes sense.
All right. Yeah. All right. Ole Miss is possibly getting past Georgia if the stars line up then.
They look good against Tulane. I'd consider it. Again, obviously, so I don't have the model play on that yet. We will have the model play for that when we do it. But, yeah.
Okay. Would you give them any shot against, not to spoil it too much, but the winner of Miami or Texas A&M or Ohio State?
I mean, if it's Miami, anybody has a chance against Miami. Ohio State less, but that's the point you made. That's the Georgia gets to the college football playoff is that like our analysis of Miami versus Ohio State is correct. That Miami is like a team that is in some ways could give a team that's stronger on defense can give Ohio State problems, and then if their offense can just do something, then all of a sudden, then there's a real fight here.
Yeah, I think that their defensive shortcomings they're gonna catch up to them at some point there. I can't see them beating any one of those 3. I'll put it this way, because we're probably, not to spoil it, we're probably more bearish on Texas A&M than the average folks. But I will say if Texas A&M gets out of there, they've proven themselves to me. And I would still have questions about Ole Miss in a head-to-head. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we went to the other side of this coin already with Georgia. We were saying for weeks and weeks that they're getting away with it, and then they went to Mississippi State and they said, you know what? Watch this. And so they stopped the getting away with it thing. Didn't really get away with it against Georgia Tech. It just, I'll put it this way. I don't think that one was in doubt so much, but boy,
They
really did not. Yeah, okay, that's your ultimate arbiter. Yeah, the offense was bad, and that's a bad defense. Now, I will say you cavalierly just tossed the SEC title game, which I both admire and question. I can't take that away 28-7. When again, I've expressed my concern about Alabama, but holding Alabama to 7 is interesting. Now, we're just going to presume that Tulane doesn't beat Ole Miss, okay, for this. So if we're just looking at, first of all, Georgia, Ole Miss. Again, like I said, I think that number should be closer to 10. You seem to like the 5.5, depending on how things line up. I will say that Ole Miss, by the numbers, has a distinct advantage. Again, I'm just concerned about the Charlie Weiss Jr. thing. Georgia's QB play, this is almost kind of like the Texas Tech argument. It's better than I expected going into the season, but still in this group, in this context, it's a bit of an Achilles heel. This is not an explosive passing game by any means, which is interesting. They did get a good receiver, a talented receiver from USC, who apparently is it's hard to figure out how to give him the ball to make plays. Really good run defense here. And again, I go back to Kirby versus a first-year head coach. I think Georgia gets out of here without breaking a sweat.
So, a couple of things. The only games that Georgia really needed to score points, obviously with the exception of the game that they lost against Alabama, the only other games they were really pressed into, we need to score more points to win, was Tennessee and Ole Miss. And those, as you can see here, Ole Miss's defensive rating of 4.3, one of the lowest on the board. And Tennessee's defensive rating, I don't even know what it is offhand, but it's not particularly good.
It's about there, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably worse now. They fired their defensive coordinator. That's how bad it was. But to be fair, that's Pete Golding's side of the ball. But no, it's when you think about it that way, it's just, it makes sense that Gunnar Stockton is not. Alabama has a much higher Apex plus Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, Miami, Texas A&M all have higher Apexes. Literally every other Power 4 team, with the exception of Oklahoma, has a higher Apex than Georgia. And when you look at the amount of points they put up in a lot of these games, it makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And even the GGAP plus is not particularly overwhelming. Their defense is okay. And I think this is a problem, too, is the fact that, and this is one of the reasons why I'm so bearish on them. I think at plus 600 it is wrong. Because all of a sudden, you're putting up a subpar offense against Ohio State's 19.4 defensive Apex. The defensive rating. Good luck. That's the best defense you've played all season. I think the best defense Georgia played was probably Alabama's, and that's 11.3. So you're playing a defense that's twice as power rated, at minimum. Even Miami, Florida. That way, if they got to Miami, that would still be the best defense that they've played, right? So this is the thing where it's like, now and again, yes, Georgia's defense is good, but Ohio State's the offense is more than good enough to punch them in the face. And it's we're going to punch you, and you're not going to be able to punch us back because our defense is just way better than your offense. And basically, Georgia needed to score points to keep them in the Ole Miss game and the Tennessee game. And if their offense had not been just good enough, or rather had the Ole Miss and Tennessee defense just been a little bit better, Georgia could have gotten blown out in some of those games. And the fact is that there's tape of that. So if you're Ryan Day, you're 100% looking at that. Mario would look at that as well. I'm sure Mike Elko would be able to look at that as well. So this is the thing where I guess Steve Sarkisian didn't, but that's okay. But this is the thing, right? It's if you are Georgia, you have quite a few weaknesses here, and I don't think I think when you look back at this Georgia team, they're not going to say, oh wow, this was like the preordained team of destiny that was going to win. It's like they were just okay at all. They were okay on offense and okay on defense, and they just won because they have better coaching. And okay, that's fine. And I feel like that was the same thing as Georgia last year, which also won the SEC against another Texas team that was also subpar, right? It's just, this is what this Georgia team is now. It's just like, we're okay and we're just a better coach team than all of you. But what happens when you run up against a team, cough, cough, Notre Dame, that's a better coach than you? Or at least is better or more equivalent in aggregate in terms of the coach. They're
Yeah.
a better team and their coach is good enough to take you down. We're not necessarily starting an argument of Kirby Smart versus Marcus Freeman today. That's not the point of today. But this is the thing. And I will say that the last time Georgia was a far better team than Ohio State a couple years ago in that Cotton Bowl, Ohio State almost won that game. This is the thing where if I just don't think Georgia has the firepower. Could they take down an Ole Miss team of a bunch of coaches that want to start their job at LSU and are just kind of, what are we still doing here? That's a real possibility. Well, if you're now up against Ohio State or you're up against Miami or Texas A&M even, I don't know if you're getting through that, right?
Yeah. And to be clear, when I said I don't see them having a problem getting out, I meant of like their specific quadrant here.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But I agree with everything you said. Now, if I want to just reduce it to three big picture things, I want to look at coach, quarterback, and defense. That's what Pete Carroll did at his peak. Who is a better coach in this playoff than Kirby? I can see one guy. Oh, really? Okay.
Well, Signetti, clearly. I think you have to have him as better.
Yep.
Ryan Day and Dan Lanning are arguable. Okay. And
Kirby has 2 national titles.
Yeah, Ryan Day does have 1.
Yep. Dan Lanning has 0. Dan Lanning 0-1. It was a rough start to the postseason career for Lanning. I don't think that was typical.
No, I will say that.
But that has to count for something, though.
I guess. I will say, though, that, like, Kirby Smart is to some extent, again, not discounting anything he has done at Georgia by any means, but he is helped by the fact that he was in the SEC East, so he basically got a free ticket to the SEC championship game, versus Ryan Day having to beat Michigan at the last game of the season just to make the Big Ten championship game. So it's, we beat up a horrible Florida team that didn't even make a bowl, versus Ohio State, we have to beat this Michigan, like this undefeated Michigan team, to make the Big Ten championship game, and if not, we're not going to make the playoff, right? Now, again, obviously, that one year they did, but that's beside the point, right? So, again, obviously Kirby Smart has been one of the best coaches in college football, 100%. At the same time, though, this is very clearly not. And you could see it in every single game, every single score, every single box score. This is not Georgia of 2-3 years ago. This is not the Georgia that's beating people up 45-10 or something. Like, it's not the same Georgia team. Their offense has regressed and their defense has regressed a lot too. This is not 2022 Georgia anymore. This is not even 2023 Georgia anymore. This is a much more grinded out Georgia that maybe before they were just like, we're just better than everybody else. Now it's okay, we're okay, and maybe we're better than you, or maybe we're not, but we're going to have to grind it out now. And I think that's Kirby Smart's mark, is being able to do that. But I just don't know if they're not more talented than Ohio State. They're not more talented than Indiana. And honestly, I don't think they're more talented than Oregon. Now, can Kirby Smart outcoach Dan Lanning and Ryan Day? Possibly, sure. Signetti possibly as well. But this Georgia team is not as talented as those teams. Just straight up.
Yes, but it has to be said at least. Georgia's performance to me is the ultimate bellwether of the SEC. And again, because we've said the Big Ten has the best teams and the SEC has the most good teams. And that kind of implies that Georgia would be almost in the USC Michigan tier. Now, they'd probably be the best of that tier. You know what? That's interesting, would they?
Yeah. See, that's the real travesty of all this, too, is the fact, and it's so sad because...
Robert's going to argue through the Super League here. Go ahead.
See, this is the thing, right? But it's true, though, right? Let's say that we get an expanded 2014 playoff next year. Let's say that they bite the bullet and do what's eventually going to happen anyways. We get the 24 teams, super playoff, whatever. And maybe you fold in conference championship games, because there's ways you could do it where just anybody who makes a conference championship game gets an automatic first-round bye. There's ways you could do this. This isn't impossible. This isn't rocket science. So in that scenario, and let's say the first round is Georgia versus USC, what's the spread in that game? What's the spread of Georgia versus, pretty sure, more Fire Michigan? What's the spread versus Washington, right? A couple years ago, that would have been 21, 18.5. It's now 8.5 against USC, maybe.
Yeah, my model had USC ranked ahead of Georgia.
See, but see, this is the problem: is that because Georgia only played 8 SEC games and then played Georgia Tech and then like an FCS team and something, versus all the Big Ten teams had to play 9 Big Ten teams, 9 other Big Ten teams, right? And this is the thing where it's when they and now the SEC is all they don't want this. They're like, we don't want to do it. And the thing is, it's law of big numbers, if it makes sense, because it's just like you're grabbing balls out of a bag, right? And if you pull out 8 balls, you have a higher chance of one of them. You have a higher chance of not picking out one of the stronger balls. But if you pick out a 9th ball, it just not exponentially, it just increases the odds of you picking out a stronger ball. And maybe instead of picking only one strong ball, maybe you now pick 2 strong balls. And now all of a sudden, now your 2-loss season goes to a 3-loss season because you just had to play just an extra good SEC team, right? And they'll beat each other up just the same as Illinois beat up USC, which cost them a playoff berth, and Michigan losing to Michigan
USC.
lost to USC, right? If Michigan didn't have to play USC. Now, again, obviously, their resume wasn't particularly compelling with losses to, like, Oklahoma and Ohio State. But even Washington, if Washington had beaten Wisconsin, which they should have, and had they been able to beat...
We'll say they just missed one of those 3 because they played Oregon and Indiana and Ohio State.
Yeah, they missed one of those and beat Wisconsin. Then
Sorry, not Indiana, Michigan.
Michigan. Yeah, that's right. That's it. Lost to Michigan. Say they missed Michigan and then they beat Wisconsin, which they should have done. Maybe they're just slightly better on the road. Then all of a sudden they're a 2-loss team too. But they're like, oh no, there's all these 3-loss Big Ten teams. They have to be worse than these 2-loss SEC teams. That's not true at all. And we don't. It's impossible to say because now USC gets to go play in the whatever bowl against whoever. I don't even know who they're playing. Who are they playing? They're playing.
That's a little personal. It's the Alamo Bowl.
Bowl.
It's not a defense contractor bowl.
No, it's not a defense contractor.
It's not a junk food bowl.
No.
It's one of the other ones named after nothing, and they play TCU.
Okay, so they're like massive favorites against TCU. Like they're not.
We'll see. Jacoby Lane. Yeah, Lemon and Lane are both out, I think. So that makes it interesting.
But if that wasn't the case, though, right? This is the thing, right? Like, by the rankings of like wins and losses, yeah, they're like roughly on par with the TCU. But if you told me that they were playing a competitive game against Georgia into the 4th quarter, I'd believe you. A competitive game against Ole Miss, competitive game against Texas A&M, yeah, that's very possible. But we will never get that data point because in the way the playoffs are currently formatted.
Yeah, I know each team is different, but how about a fair analog to... Yeah, no. I was going to say, is maybe Michigan a rough analog to Georgia, but Michigan really struggles at quarterback at times.
Michigan was just like...
That's the problem.
The other issue with them, even if they had one less loss, is just that who did they beat? Like, the only good teams they played, they lost against.
Yeah, not in terms of resume, just in terms of just how good the team is. Like, in terms of... If I... Like, when you're saying, would I be surprised if Georgia... Well, my first reaction would be USC beat the brakes off of Michigan, so I could see them going toe-to-toe. I bring that up because Georgia's defensive ranking of a 12 here, it's a little bit less than Michigan's because the other Big Ten teams here are just like way better than that. Indiana and Oregon and Ohio State are way above that. And even then, USC scored 27 against Oregon, the best defense, at Eugene. I think, I don't know. I keep on going back and forth here. I think maybe there's too much Kirby in that plus 600 at the bottom there.
Yeah.
On Georgia. I just can't see... Look, I think Georgia, they win their quadrant here, but whatever they draw from the next one, you've got 2 really good pass defenses there in Miami and Ohio State, and I think that's the end of this year's Georgia. I can't see it getting past that. Fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think last year with Notre Dame, Georgia, because a lot of people, myself included, like, I bet on Notre Dame, but I was like, I'm betting on Notre Dame because the model says to, but I can't imagine a scenario where Notre Dame wins this game, but yeah, they did. Because this Georgia team is just not, because it's such a scary thing, right? You're like, oh, it's Georgia, but it's not. This is not 2022 Georgia anymore. This is not best defense ever anymore. They're not even the best defense in their side of the bracket. They're like the 3rd best defense on their side of the bracket. And
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
thing. And it's as I'm considering the other side of the bracket, which has better defenses, right? So this is the thing. They're not. This is not an NFL defense anymore. This is not a really good offense. Like they're never really great on offense. They're always like just okay on offense and they crush you on defense. But now that crush you on defense has been like will mostly stop you on defense, and that offense is like we're a passable SEC offense.
So instead of having 6 guys that'll go to the Eagles, they might have 4 guys that are distributed between the Browns and the Texans.
Exactly. That's the thing. That's the joke,
I got
right?
it right.
Because the entire, basically, that entire Georgia team basically ended up on the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, none of these guys are going to play for the Eagles.
Yeah. Okay. Last one, Texas A&M. I was really strongly in this team's camp until they started to have the near-death experience thing at South Carolina. Your model was very bearish on them. You have them by far, you actually have them ranked, below even James Madison in this group. I think the offense is overlooked. I think I do believe in the offense. Year 2 of Marcel Reed. I'm guessing Colin Klein stays. Has Colin Klein been announced to Kansas State, or is that something they're working on? Do we know?
What do you mean?
Colin Klein OC here. I thought that Kansas State was going to hire him. I don't know if they've announced that yet.
No.
That would be the concern about the offense, obviously, if their really good OC is not there. Weird that the defense is the relative weak point for a Mike Elko team. Really interesting, too, that they're basically second in this field in wins above average. Now, that happens when you beat everybody. You pile those up. You can pile those up if basically you only lose one regular game season against like decent but not great SEC teams, because your decent SEC teams would still beat an average FBS team pretty handily. Just think like a pretty good American team or a really bad ACC team. You're talking about that. Not really bad. A poor ACC team. So it's interesting. I'm about 1% as interested in backing this Texas A&M team as I was a month ago. How about you?
My model was like really super bearish on them for like originally it was like this team's great. Love this team, right? My model even had them against Notre Dame. Bet them against Notre Dame, that was great. And then as the season dragged on, and as they narrowly beat Auburn, they beat Auburn and covered the spread, but narrowly, then they started I don't think they covered against Arkansas. They didn't cover against a couple other teams in there. They had a couple of close encounters. Then all of a sudden, they arguably should have lost to South Carolina, and then they just get outright beaten pretty badly by Texas by 10 points. It wasn't a particularly competitive game. And again, we've been pretty harsh on Texas for many reasons, but like we can't be both harsh on Texas and be like, yeah, but Texas A&M is fine. Like those are two. If you want to be harsh on Texas, then you have to say, okay, but then also that team pretty soundly beat Texas A&M, and that's a lot of people are gonna be like, when that they have to be good. They beat a playoff team. They actually beat 2 playoff teams, but they beat probably, with the exception of the G5 teams, the 2 worst playoff teams. That's the thing. Like my model has been bearish on Texas A&M, specifically their defense. Their offense has been good, but their defense is just not there. And yeah, is that Mike Elko's fault? No, he has brought this Texas A&M team from nothing to a very competitive team. And again, I don't think Marcel Reed was probably his first choice as quarterback. I think there's probably other choices he probably would have rather had at quarterback. Like, or maybe not, I don't know, because he inherited Marcel Reed, I'm fairly sure.
I believe so, because he played some last year, and I don't think that he recruited him in.
So this is where, because I have a sneaking suspicion, and he's still trying to build up the program that he wants. And I think give him one more year, and yeah, this Texas, like, I want to see the changes he makes for this next year. He can recruit, and he probably is bringing in his recruits slowly, but it's just going to take some more time. Again, it's hard to find a good quarterback. It's not easy. It is not easy to just have a quarterback that's good. It takes a lot to have a good quarterback. And Texas A&M, we got this guy, let's just stick with him. So and again, that's not even the point, right? Their offense is fine. It's their defense that's the problem. And I think my model has really caught on that their defense is not good, and that's why it had them close against Arkansas. My model called that. I didn't touch it, but it did. So the model had been pegging them as being worse for a while, and now all of a sudden we just get to this point, and it's okay, yeah, what are we doing here? And it's, yeah, this team it almost loses to South Carolina. It gets outright beat by Texas. Like, my model has Miami favored. I think that's correct. I think the only reason Miami is not favored is because there is an SEC logo in front of one of the teams. And I think we saw this last year, where that SEC logo did not mean a lot in the playoffs. It really didn't. Georgia got knocked out by Notre Dame after they had a bye. They got knocked out by Notre Dame. What else? Who else was in the playoff?
Texas was life and death.
Against
Texas
Arizona
just
State.
sarked the whole thing, give up a huge lead.
Yes.
Very lucky to win, and they were out the next week.
Yes. And then who else? What were the other four? Yeah, Texas. Yeah, Texas was rough the entire time. What were the other games?
There was one more. Doggone it.
They had three. Not Ole Miss. Tennessee. Tennessee got crushed by Ohio State.
Yeah, they lasted like about 5 minutes.
Exactly, right? So, like, their history in the playoffs has not been amazing. And 2 SEC teams have to advance to the next round because one of them isn't playing and 2 of them play each other. So there has to be at least 2 SEC teams in the next round. But if you told me that 3 of the 5 SEC teams lost round 1, and I would also have to include Ole Miss. Now, maybe Ole Miss survives, whatever. If you told me Texas A&M lost, I'm not shocked at all. I'm not shocked at all, and I can see it 100%.
I'm going to just make both sides of an argument here. And you're gone there. Texas was the only team at one point when Texas played South Carolina. They hadn't played a team that was in the top half by 1 loss in the SEC. Every team they had played was in the bottom half. Now, I don't know if that still turned out to be right. One of the teams they had played at that point snuck up to the top half. Until they played Texas, and to your point, it almost looked like a culture shock. Oh, gosh. This isn't South Carolina. And I will also say that the Notre Dame team that they beat in week 2 might be like one of the most, I don't want to say it's aged the best. They're getting hybrid mileage out of what was really just a diesel game, if you will.
Yeah.
In that, yeah, Notre Dame completely changed 2 weeks later, and they're fooling everybody's model. So that's a pretty strong argument against Texas A&M. But like I said, if they beat Miami and Ohio State, I think they validate the 1 loss on the season, it being in the SEC.
True.
I don't see it happening.
You know exactly, right?
Yeah. But if they do, it's okay. Maybe Texas was just a one-off. Who knows? Everybody has one. So, how about this? And the numbers are gonna say something different to my feeling. Let's just say Texas A&M actually makes it out of their quadrant here, and they face Georgia. I think I'd probably want Texas. I'd probably back Texas A&M, especially if I get some points.
100%, yeah. And you probably would be getting points. You're probably getting 3.5.
Yeah.
If they did, now that's a massive if. Massive if. I don't think they're going to get out of their first game, but if they were somehow to beat Miami, Florida, and then somehow beat Ohio State, sure, okay, yeah, we could talk about that. But I would, like, for me to back Texas A&M against Ohio State or to back them against Georgia, in the Miami game, this isn't just like, okay, we scrape out a last-second field goal win because Mario did something stupid. It's like I need dominance. I need 30-some-odd points. I need, like, you to hold Miami to 20. I need you to hold Miami well and score a lot, and then we can talk about this. But if you're not giving me that...
The Carson Beck 3 interceptions.
Yeah, like, Carson Beck 3 interceptions, you put up, like, 30-something... It's 30-14, and then it's okay. Now we can talk about you against Ohio State, but I just don't think they have it in them. I honestly don't, and the entire back half of the season has proven that they just don't have that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I can't say they're not a. I can say comfortably they're not a great team. I'm not going to say they're not a good team. And again, if I'm a little TBD on this team, which at 18-1. It's the horse racing guy in me. Santa Anita opens. Today's Monday, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Opens in 11 days. So maybe it's just I'm getting the itch for that. And just 18-1 is not the worst shot in this field in terms of not for a lot of money, but there's possibility for a proof of concept there that I think maybe some aren't thinking. So having said that, I think the fact that we've got this variance between that number that we just talked about here, 18-1 and 6-1 here on Georgia. All right. Having said all that, the book If I'm looking just to get a little crazy here, since I can't really make a super compelling case other than really outside shot for A&M, if I wanted to bet on no SEC team to make the final, don't know if we have that.
I don't think we have that. We have winning conference. The Big Ten is minus 200. The SEC is plus 200. I think that's about right. You have obviously named the finalists. Indiana and Ohio State plus 290. Indiana and Georgia is the next one at plus 600. Ohio State and Oregon plus 650. So there's that. Team to make the championship game, if you could bet. Georgia to make is plus 240. Ohio State to make it is minus 110. There's not much. You could have Ohio State to beat Indiana or Indiana to beat Ohio State. You could have those. But
yeah, it's all around.
nothing.
Yeah, I think the market's onto it. I just look. I didn't come here to crap on the SEC. It's just when I say the SEC had the most good teams, that's praise. It's just your good teams are outside the top three. And guess what? It's not like one of them was Notre Dame and got kicked out of the club here. All three made it. And I just, on the other side of the bracket, very favorable draws. Oregon, Texas Tech can be a thing, but I just, not to revisit that, I think I can't see anything other than Oregon and Indiana on the other side of the bracket. Still see the pass here, guys. What do I say? Good year for the SEC. Congratulations to A&M. I don't know how to wrap this up, Robert. What do we say? But it's tough when we're focused on a conference. I say, how can I bet on them not to make the title game?
I don't know. I think the fact that the Big Ten is minus 200 to three-peat as champions.
Yeah.
And that all three of those were against non-SEC teams. And that realistically, if the Big Ten were to win again, it would also be a nod against the SEC teams. That's 3 straight finals missed for the SEC as well. Again, we have these arguments, what's the better league? In my opinion, it's very clear. It depends what you mean by better, but in terms of my definition of better, I know what I think is the better league.
I do too. I'll put it this way. To end on a somewhat positive note for the SEC folks. I think that there's a great chance to prove that more good teams, there's a lot of merit to prove the depth of the SEC and how that really comes to fruition in the playoff. If you believe it, this is your opportunity. How about that?
Yeah, I think if you could take down Miami, that would be a huge boost, in my opinion, of the SEC. If Texas A&M wins, I'd be like, okay, maybe we have something. Ole Miss winning is roughly expected at this point. Again, I don't envy. If you're Alabama or Oklahoma, I don't think you're gonna have a great time against Indiana. The thing is, though, the SEC, all the SEC people, no matter who wins in that game, they're gonna be betting them against Indiana. Yep. There's gonna be a ton of money on whoever wins that game against Indiana. And I can't wait to bet that game on Indiana. I'm not kidding. That's going to be a massive bet for me. Whatever that spread is, I don't.
To that point, how about this? SEC, prove your chops by winning this quadrant, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Indiana, or this quadrant, Miami, A&M, and Ohio State. I think that, and again, not that I disrespect you, I will say that I will give you even much more respect if they win just one of those. How about that? Since we've been saying...
Yeah.
Those are the two where you have 2 of the top 3, and the other one, unfortunately, is Texas Tech and James Madison get to face Oregon. So no opportunity there. And I'm not going to give you credit for having 2 teams beat Tulane. Sorry. We're being realistic here. Okay. Robert, thank you very much. Enjoyed this. This was a very nice, how do I say this without crapping on the podcast proper. This is a nice change from the weekly podcast in that a little less structured, a little more free-flowing. We go here, we go there. We enjoy AI art. We will be back, everybody, as Robert said, in about 6 days. Sunday afternoon / evening, we're planning to record our look back at round 1 and our previews of week 2, or round 2. So thank you for joining us, and we will talk to you then. Until then, good luck to you all.
See ya.